All right, Bass. Good news. Real Water Sports just dropped a what foiling gear you should bring to Chicama video.
You're kidding me. That's incredible. I'm excited to check that out. Um, I this has actually been the number one question because of the foil that I have. Is it too much foil? You get to a certain speed and you want to go less foil for more stability and control. And yeah, I've been concerned about this. So I'm so excited. The Real Water Sports has a video that explains it all for me, lays it all out there. I need somebody to kind of spoon feed me, you know?
Well, it's your buddies. It's not only Trip Foreman, but it's Joey Harpstripe.
Joey, the guy who taught us, he's our sensei, he's our foil guru.
He's no
Joey.
joke. He's legit.
He's
Um,
completely legit. Yeah.
yeah, Harpstrite. And yeah, so it's a 15-minute video. What's the best gear for foiling Chicama? And they talk through it all. And the footage, I guess Trip or a couple of guys from Real went there, and it just looks like the ultimate foiling wave. I mean, it's the longest left in the world, and it's ideal for foiling.
Yeah, it looks like leg burners, long, long rides. I'm sure I'll be kicking out, just waving my hand. Please pick me up.
There you go. So go to realwatersports.com for any and all of your water sport needs, not only foil stuff, of course, but surf stuff as well. But their video, they have like 23,000 subscribers on YouTube, and their videos are actually really, really helpful and good. So go and grab those. And then, of course, while you're there, grab some NVS fins because Surf NVS has it all. But if you happen to be on Real Water Sports, throw them in the cart there.
And look, I imagine when we're on our trip in Peru, we're going to have some NVS fins. Of course, everyone that comes along is welcome to try anything that I have, and I'm sure I can speak for David here and say, yes, David, they can ride what you bring along.
Yeah, completely. And NVS always sends fins with us on these trips, anyways. But they've got everything you need for any style of board, any number. What are you doing?
Does this mean I get to ride your fish or
You can
skip
ride
fry
my
fish?
fins. You can ride my fins. Not
To
my
be honest with
fish.
you, fishes never excite me backside like a traditional fish. I would look more to something like a wide-tailed, more performance-oriented quad fin or something like that for me backside. Actually a
I've
three fin. Backside a three fin, like a wide-tailed three fin would be for me backside. You know how backside you get that kind of all that leverage, you know? Anyway,
yeah. No, I've always felt that way too, but I'm still inclined to bring this one. Anyways, go to surfnvs.com for all of your fin needs or follow them on Instagram as well just to see the collaborations that are most recent and what they're up to. So,
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing rail.
yeah, guy. Yeah, guy, David. Yeah, guy. You know what? It's May 1st, David. May number 1 of the year 2025. This is the Spit Podcast. David Lee Scales and Scott Bass with you, and we're talking all things surf. And I've got a who said that. I might try to stump you. I've got some pretty interesting. I got a very interesting email from Scott McLeod Murdoch about stab and the electric acid surfboard test. And he and I had a little back and forth about some of that stuff. Of course, today, I believe, is the day that stab drops how surfers get paid with Laird Hamilton. So that's going to be, I think, very engaging.
Laird Hamilton versus the world, I think is what it's entitled. Um,
Spoiler alert, Laird wins.
I was like, I was with Ashton Goggins one time and he had a t-shirt on. I've seen this slogan before, but it was about Nancy Reagan's war on drugs. Drugs
Yeah.
won.
There's some pretty cool t-shirts out there. Speaking of cool t-shirts, check out this one. I saw this and I had to order it. I'm kind of a geek for ordering stupid stuff online. Like when I see it, I'm like, oh, that's so funny. I'm going to get that and wear it. But this one says, that's a horrible idea. What time? That's a
Wow.
pretty good
So your
t-shirt, huh? That's pretty
your
cool.
dad Your dad jokes know no bounds. They went straight from verbal delivery to t-shirt delivery.
Man,
Um, Speaking of t-shirts, Tower 20 is coming together. You and I have talked about it off air, but we've got a whole new run of t-shirts coming your way to a retailer near you as well, coming up
that's
soon.
cool. Yeah.
So look forward to that probably next month in June, I think it is.
What did we decide? Because I don't remember talking about it.
Well,
I'm
just
going to
Tower
let your
20.
good taste run with it. I'm sure you've come up with some good ones.
No, they really did most of the heavy lifting, but Tower 20, the program is they make the t-shirts available in retailers. So it's you and I don't have to worry about fulfillment and stocking t-shirts in our garage and then shipping them.
Yeah,
Um, they handle and place in strategic surf shop, basically, surf shop retailers. So people can get our shirts at their local retailer rather than going and having them shipped.
cool.
So
That's great.
I also, in addition to the things that you said, we need to recap Bells a little bit because
Yeah,
that happened
yeah.
since we last spoke. And then also, you and I were talking about man on man. Where was the first man on man surf contest? I've got the answer with a lot of personal insights to back it up.
So, does that come from Mez?
No, came
Came from
from
somebody on the East Coast.
the son of one of the surfers who competed in the event.
Was it in Florida?
No, it was in North
Virginia
Carolina.
Beach, North Carolina. Right. It was on
North
the East
Carolina.
Coast.
Can I
Yeah.
just go ahead and read it?
Yeah. Like because I know the story. It's like on the tip of my tongue. So go ahead.
I don't remember you telling this version of the story.
Okay. But I
So
do,
that
I did say that besides what you heard from Peter Droon and all the
yes,
Australians, the first man-on-man professional event actually occurred on the East Coast. And I think I heard that from
100%.
Greg Lohr might have told me that.
Okay, 100%. This, by the way, as we read through this email, it'll highlight how little you and I retain from these conversations that we have. Because he even says, David, Hank Warner told you this answer 1 year ago when you published that episode. So it's not like 10 years ago that I got the information. I had the information 1 year ago and it was in one ear and out the other.
Uh-oh.
Well, it's because we talk about surfing so much on air.
Yeah.
You can't remember all of it.
And Hank Warner might have told me, actually, now that I think about it, like, because, Hank was there. So,
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Hey, David and Scott, I'm halfway through the April 10th episode of Spit, where you guys discuss where was the first man on man professional surf contest. While the true answer may be in dispute, we can certainly rule out the 1977 Stubbies Pro at Burley, as it was preceded by the first U.S. mainland professional surf contest held in 1972 in Atlantic Beach, North Carolina. David, you were given this answer only 1 year ago by Hank Warner when he did the Surf Splendor podcast. I have known this answer my entire life because my father, Gary Revel, and I presume I'm pronouncing Revel correctly. It is Revel. I will, was that Revel or Revel? What do you think, Scott?
okay. I,
Let's go
I think
Revel.
one of those two.
So I will continue to mispronounce it, but I'm
Yeah.
pronouncing it Revel.
Yeah.
Gary Revel was a participant in that very contest, and it was won by his friend Yancey Spencer. In fact, my old man told me the story of that contest and the week leading up to it many times as we drove down from my hometown in coastal Delaware to the Outer Banks, which we did several times a year in my early childhood. Just to be sure, I paused the podcast and called the old guy just to hear his version of the story one more time so that I could accurately relay it to you. In 1972, the first professional surf contest on the East Coast was held at I think it's Jeanette's Pier in Nags Head or Jeanette's. Um, and Nags Head, North Carolina. Nags Head is the northern outer banks, and while not as revered as the heavy sand bottom bars on Hatteras Island, is better than most places on the East Coast. Nags Head at the time, was scarcely populated, even in the summer months, but especially in the springtime, which is when I believe this contest was scheduled. Gary and friends from the Mid-Atlantic region had posted up in Nags Head in the days leading up to the contest. Accompanied by Yancey from Pensacola, Gary and Yancey had met when Gary's mom, my grandmother, had moved to Pensacola following the early death of my grandfather, and Gary and friends traveled south eager to escape the Delaware winters. Additionally, Gary and Yancey were both members of Hank Warner's AGP, Atlantic Gulf
Gulf
Pacific Surf Team.
Pacific. Yeah.
Yeah.
Atlantic
Prior
Gulf
to
Pacific.
Yeah, prior to this professional contest, Hank had shaped a 6'5" quote poached egg single fin for Yancey, and that was the board Yancey eventually used to win the first contest. The reference to poached egg is a result of Hank copying one of Skip Fry's eggs, hence poached. As the boys were posted up in Nag's Head enjoying head high laughs off the piers, groomed sandbars, Betty Marsh, who owned a surf shop in Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, a couple hours south with far inferior waves, was lobbying to have the contest moved to her town. In her defense, there was far more commercial activity in Atlantic Beach, and the true surf in true surf industry form, the contest was moved from the prime sandbars of Nag's Head to the dribbly mush of Atlantic Beach. While the move from Nag's Head to Atlantic Beach may not be entirely important to the point of the story, it is always an important part of my dad's story. Not to take away anything from Yancey, who my dad always spoke highly of and was deeply saddened when he was informed of his passing 14 years ago, but as the story goes, the contest favorite in 4 to 6 foot Outer Banks surf was far different than the favorites in the 2 to 3 foot Atlantic Beach. Plenty of people would have put money on a young GR in these conditions, which, though he never said this outright, I believe is the reason this piece of the story was always included. It is always a classic money decision, which has always been a thorn in the side of professional surfing. The waves would have been the stars in Nag's Head, but that was not the case in Atlantic Beach. Now, remember, Yancey grew up on the Gulf Coast, which, while it does get hollow and good, is far more frequently waist high and mushy. Yancey was a wizard in that type of surf. When the boys heard the contest was being relegated to Atlantic Beach, they were all dismayed, Yancey included. While Yancey intended to go home, the Delaware boys forced him in the car and dragged him to Atlantic Beach. Upon arrival in Atlantic Beach, it was apparent to everyone Yancey would be the contest favorite. At the Atlantic Beach Pier, as the Atlantic Beach Pier bore a striking resemblance to Yancey's home break in Pensacola. The entire contest was held in man-on-man format and woman-on-woman format as well. Yancey's first heat was against David Nueva and his last against Dale Dobson. Yancey took first, Dale second, Gary seventh, and a Gulf Coast legend was born. End quote. This is by Quinn Revell.
Well, that's great insight and straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. His father,
Horse's
Gary,
son. Yeah.
horse's son.
Yeah,
Couple of
Gary
things.
and Quinn.
Was that Yancey Spencer the first? Was that Sterling's grandfather, or Yancey
So,
Spencer the second, which would be
well,
Sterling's? I think. I don't know. I get them confused.
it would have been the second because it was 1972, and I would think that was uh, Sterling's dad would have been about 20 at that time.
Right. Hmm. Well,
I would
that's
think.
maybe he'll clarify that for us, but that's
Yeah, I
cool,
don't know for
man.
sure.
So and you know what's really cool is the competition that Yancey took down. David Nueva in his first heat and Dale Dobson in the final. That's bookends of complete mastery, complete legend, especially competitively. Like to beat Dale Dobson competitively in the finals, that's a feat in and of itself. So, and the poached egg. How cool is it that once again the surfboard sort of takes center stage here, along with Yancey, and that Hank Warner's surfboard won the very first man-on-man professional event in the history of surfing. I would love to get some commentary from the likes of, say, Peter Townend or Ian Cairns or even Peter Druin or Mark Richards, these guys that are probably going to, you know, raise their Australian flag and say, no, 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 that wasn't international competition. So that might be the rub is, right? That they say that the Stubbies Pro at Burley Heads was an international man-on-man competition. What did the field look like at Nags Head? Was there anybody from outside of the United States?
I don't know. That's a good question. Quinn did send me a link to the floridasurfmuseum.org, which shows a photo and does have a caption, a pretty lengthy caption, but it just kind of recounts what Quinn already said. It doesn't state what the field was or who the surfers were.
Well, very interesting because regardless, do you think it matters if it was an international field or just a regional field? It was a professional man-on-man competition, the first ever. And I think that's kind of where Peter Druin raises his hand and goes, "We were the first ones with man-on-man format."
So
And
we just need to check the dates of Peter Drone then, because as Quinn says at the beginning, it's still up for debate what was the first, but we know for certain this one took place in 72, and here are the details. So
well,
if we
Peter
can,
Druin's was in 78 or 77 or something. It wasn't in 72.
so there you go. So that is excluded from the conversation, but there may be others that haven't come up in our conversation. The other thing is, you and I doing this on the air kind of makes it ephemeral. We need to cement it somehow.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got firsthand
EOS.
firsthand source from Gary and from his son. So,
I know, but what I'm saying is this conversation just goes into the ether. We need it somewhere in print
oh,
or on the internet so that people can reference this information in the future rather than
I
trying to
wonder
track
what would
down.
happen if you AI'd this information. That what would be spit out of an AI of like Grok or Microsoft Copilot or one of those. I bet it's Peter Druin. And the reason I bring that up, David, is because you mentioned, like we need to cement this. And if you talk about something enough, eventually the web crawlers, the AI algorithms are going to pick up our conversation. And at some point, I wouldn't be surprised if they go, well, it's the stubbies in Australia. However, there are some that consider it to be, what did you pull up?
That's exactly what it did. I just said, what was the first man-on-man surf contest in Chat GPT? And it said the first man-on-man surf contest is widely recognized as taking place during the 1977 Stubbies Surf Classic held at Burley Heads. So we need to you're like you said, we need to clog the
Yeah.
algorithm with new information.
Yeah. The truth.
The truth.
So does the AI state it as like this is it, or it doesn't? It says it's widely. AI usually
Widely
does a pretty good
recognized.
job of kind of creating a caveat around what they suggest to you. Like
Yeah. I'll
well,
I'll get on the phone with Matt Warshaw later today, and we will see where we can fit this into
what
the
needs to
EO.
happen is a Wikipedia page. I think that's a web crawler space where all the AIs are like definitely crawl Wikipedia, because it's free and we won't get sued if we take their content or whatever, like so
Okay.
anyway. That's
Who
something that maybe some of our friends on the East Coast need to do. Create a Wikipedia entry for the first man-on-man professional event. That's yes.
Quinn, your work here is not done.
Yeah, no. Create.
Quinn, we will support you.
All right, fair
Just
enough.
copy and paste the email you sent me and just put it on Wikipedia.
Easy.
Yeah. But you mentioned PT. I've got a follow up to PT too, if you want to go straight into that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Remember, we were asking about why he wears pink?
Yes.
Tony Roberts, who runs a great YouTube channel, Real Surf Stories, interviewed PT and then sent us this clip with PT answering the question.
ELS and Bassie. TR here. Just dropped the most incredible conversation with PT. We talked before about how he is perhaps the most influential and impactful surfer in history. And I'm pretty sure that this cements that legacy. And you guys recently asked about why he loves pink. And so I asked him on our behalf, and here's what he had to say. So check out the new video, Real Surf Stories YouTube. Why pink?
The pink, I get asked that one all the time. My mother, 1969, because I still have the order form that ordered the first pink board from Joe Larkin. Sitting at breakfast at the family table. I'm from a family of 6. I'm the oldest. And in Australia, when you get up in that at that time, we're all teenagers, and actually the youngest sister was really young. No one leaves the breakfast table till Mum says it's okay, and I go, Mum, I'm going to get a new surfboard. What colour should I get it? And up at that point, I had a royal blue, a yellow, an orange. And she goes, son, I think you should get your next surfboard hot pink. That way they'll never miss you. So I went round to Joe Larkins because I was getting a new board. And I tell Joe what I want. And I go, I want it to be hot pink. That wasn't kind of cool to have a pink surfboard as a guy back in 1969, right? And he goes, are you sure about that? And I said, yeah, make it hot pink. So I get that board and I come second in the Queensland titles, my first major result in the junior division, to Andrew McKinnon. And I went, oh, this pink thing's kind of working. It became my trademark.
How funny is that?
That's a great story. And PT, the most impactful. That's such a great question to bandy about over a beer or a cup of tea. Who is the most impactful surfer ever? Regarding competition, pop culture, the industry. Um, you could say that PT is definitely in the top 5. I mean, this guy's done stuff that people don't realize. He's quite a mover and a shaker behind the scenes, PT. For instance, I just got a ballot for the Huntington Beach Surfing Walk of Fame that they do. And I get one from PT, and he's kind of in charge of that. Like he's one of the big movers and shakers regarding that. And I mean, that's just one little iota. He does so much that he moves a lot of chess pieces, and people don't. And he purposely people don't know about it.
Well, you and I had talked about it months ago, and Tony was referencing an earlier email that he sent in where he did make an argument for PT. And I just pulled up that email. I can reread it real quick because it's pretty short. But he said, I love the unanswerable premises that really make you deep dive, but I can't believe you guys didn't think of PT. Surfing wise, he helped bust down the door. He was the 1976 champ. He molded Tom Curran from a stoner kid to an NSSA future world champ, an association that he helped create and manage, who was the GOAT's biggest influence before Kelly really went on to be influencing the world's most surfers. What he means, obviously, is that PT was influencing Kelly. Um, but the sum of those parts is greater than the whole. There's the bronzed Aussies, who, if you weren't around in the 70s, were revolutionary and highly impactful, stressing an anti drug, anti booze message in the height of that era. He was a world class shaper. He had regular piece in the major newspaper in Sydney. He had perhaps the first real surf show on TV. It was called Wave Watch, and it was all time. His ESPN commentating is still talked about today. He surfed in the greatest Hollywood film of all time, Big Wednesday. He was a publisher of Surfing Magazine, president of SEMA, and so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things. One is look for next year in 2026 as being a huge year for professional surfing and the World Surf League because it'll be their 50th anniversary of their first world champion, which was Peter Townend in 1976. I've already seen some rumblings around the industry about sort of, celebrating, quite frankly, professional surfing. I'm going to be interviewing Dave Prodan next week. And Dave, I'm going to be throwing you under the bus a little bit as sort of the bad cop. I'm going to be the good cop.
Go for it.
That should be interesting. But don't worry, I'm not, it'll be
Just don't misrepresent.
Oh, come on. I'm going to
You're,
slip up somewhere.
I don't mind being the bad cop, but try to keep it, you know, my intentions
Well,
clear.
let me summarize what I think you would say so I get it correct.
Okay, yeah,
Right.
let's do it.
So I think, look, Dave Prodan, my co-host Dave Scales, believes that the WSL is sort of missing the mark here because they are going towards locations that are specific to uh, um, they're basically, if we're trying to crown world champions in the world's greatest waves, we're missing the mark. That's what David would say, that the world's greatest waves, we're showing up at places that aren't the world's greatest waves. And would that be a fair characterization of your comment?
You might want to work on delivery a little bit.
Well, I'm just trying, dude. I've been working on
I'm
delivery for
just
60 years. It's going to be crappy no matter what. Believe me. If you've listened to
no,
my podcast, you know it's not good.
you got the gist of it correct. What I would say is that in addition, I want like basically I want to help them achieve their goals. Their goals are eyeballs, right? And so my point is if you run the best surfers in the best waves, everything else falls into place. So the drama that they are trying to manufacture through these, final five scenario or whatever, all of that is inherent in the best waves in the world. So that should be
Right.
the focus at all times. And it feels like
Right.
that is no longer even a 10th priority for them.
Okay, that's interesting. So getting the greatest surfers in the greatest waves isn't even number 10 on the list of things that they seem to be doing.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
Count the number of days that have great surf compared to the number of days that they run competition.
Well, again, it'll be interesting. Dave's a friend of mine. I'm not there to beat up on the WSL, but I do want to bring up some things that I think the hardcore surf fans in general feel, you know. So we'll see.
Good.
But anyway,
I mean,
PT, yeah.
it's unlike you to prep a whole week in advance.
I mean, that was the prep. I just did it.
All right, good. Well,
No,
you're off
I've
to a
got
good
some
start.
questions for him. I wrote them down somewhere. I don't know
Good,
where they are.
good, good.
Anyway,
Anyways, thanks TR for the PT call, and definitely listeners. I think it's about an hour long interview. If you're interested, go check that out at Real Surf Stories.
David, who said that?
Oh,
Who?
I've got a theme song.
Oh, great.
You ready?
Yes. Diana, what's up, bro? Who said that? I have a who said that. Yeah. Well, I have a who said that, David. Are you prepared?
Well, I got it right last week, so I'm on a roll.
You ready? Who said that?
DJ
That's pretty
Seaweed.
good. That's really good. I'm tearing up. It was so funny that there's moisture coming out of my eyes. It's a little
Well, when
long.
you're
My suggestion
look,
is that turns into 8 seconds or something like that, but it's funny.
it's the tears. I mean, when you're around great art, tears just well up. I
They
mean,
do.
it's just a natural, innate human instinct. So I
Yeah.
feel you. I was feeling it as well.
Yeah. Good work, Mitch.
Thank you, DJ
Oh,
Seaweed. Thank you.
DJ Seaweed. That's right. DJ Seaweed. Good work. Okay. So, David, who said that? You ready? And I quote, with Jimmy, it wasn't so much about the session, but more about working with him to get the shots. And that was a new thing for me. Like when he'd shoot from the water, his lens was a 35 millimeter. So you'd have to try and stay close, almost running him over. We were stoked to have him, stoked to have his documentation. It could have been like, oh, here comes Mr. Camera. But he was one of the gang. He was mellow, never like, hey, I got these really great photos. Even when we had a good photo session, it seemed like he was always humble. Who said that, David? Was it one, Richie Collins, two, Jamie Brissick, three, Tom Curran, or four, Todd Holland?
Wow. Okay. I mean, the only Jimmy photographer that came to mind instantly was Medico, which would mean Tom Curran would have said that. But now I mean, there's got to be other Jimmys that I'm just not thinking of.
Jimmy Kane?
No, because you didn't reference any surfers that would have been Jimmy Kane's era. Um, I guess I'll just go with Tom Curran. There's
You're
a part of me
right.
that
You're
wants to.
correct.
Oh, okay.
You
Okay, cool.
won.
Okay.
Yeah, I interrupted you but I wanted to acknowledge your greatness here.
Okay, thanks. Whew. Good to be
Okay.
back in the winning column because I got a lot of L's in the history.
It could have been Jamie Brisick. Jamie Brisick was in that zone,
Too young.
a little too young. That's true. Yeah, he came later.
Also,
All right. Well, you got it right,
Brissick
Tom
wasn't
Curran.
Brissick wasn't Santa Barbara. Brissick, I mean, I'm sure he went up and surfed Santa Barbara enough, but that wasn't exactly his zone. But also, more verbose than I'm used to Tom Curran being, so that threw me off.
Well, that came from this great Jimmy Medico book,
I've
Shaping
seen that.
Surf History. Tom Curran, Almere, California. Really cool book. There are some really great books. Like if you just open up a page, just a random page.
Okay, on the left, doing the air. That's the quiz right there. Who is that?
Oh, you don't know who this is? Do you know?
I don't know. I mean, I do know. I just can't think of who it is.
This
I'm gonna
gentleman
feel.
was in our shape off at one point. His name is Davy Smith.
That's right, Davy Smith. Yeah, yeah, I knew that. Should have known that. But
Here's a
yeah, no.
here's an So this is bad for the audio because people can't see it, but who does that look like?
Is it a goofy? Oh wow, what the heck is that turn? I mean, it looks like I have no idea.
Could it be Dane Reynolds?
I mean, there's elements of Dane in there. That's just I don't even know what to say about that. That looks
That
like a
was
Gumby.
Davy Miller. That was Davy Miller, who I often, when I see Dane Reynolds, I go, oh, he's got a little tiny bit of Davy Miller in his style.
Interesting.
Right?
Davy Miller, I've got a quote from him on the for the Bells segment, actually.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
The Surfer's Artist on Instagram, Davy Miller.
Yeah, he was an incredible surfer. Really great style. I always enjoyed his style. You know what? I got to take a quick break, but we're going to come back and we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to wrap up some bells, which I watched a ton of,
You got me too.
and I've got some other insight. So
Okay.
stay with us.
Sounds good.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Welcome back to you.
The best in show this year at the Boardroom show is Best in Show Board Build Off. It's a competition for all surfboard builders around the world. It's an opportunity for you to get a board at the Boardroom show and have a board on display for everyone to see. And the category this year for the Best in Show Board Build Off is fish. And we're asking you to include wooden accents and meaningful symbology. And David, that brings me to an email that I got from Scott Murdoch McLeod, who is a board builder. And I'm going to attempt to read it, but basically his thought was, and we had a back and forth, he and I, and it's along the lines of the Great British Bake Off, which we mentioned last week, right? This idea that you throw different elements into the bake off and then the expert bakers are asked to create something. So imagine like a mixture of Stab's electric acid surfboard test and maybe the Boardroom show, or maybe not. But think about this. You have a surfer. Let's say the next great surfer for electric acid surfboard test could be Rob Machado, in my opinion. He would be a good one. He can communicate super effectively, and he's one of the best surfers in the world. He spins a wheel to determine what type of board will be made. By the way, let me step back and say this is like a Netflix TV show or it's on Stab, but it's a series, right? Like Stab does. It's like, let's say 6 episodes. Rob spins the wheel to determine which type of board will be made. On this wheel, it's tri-fin, it's fish, it's quad, it's step up, it's gun, it's nose rider. Each season, one of these boards is chosen through the spinning of the wheel. They spin the wheel also to determine what surf spot this board will be surfed at. And those selections, those options will be curated to fit the board design. In other words, if it's a nose rider, you would have Malibu or Pavones or Chicama, right? And then there's another spin of the wheel to determine the type of construction, perhaps carbon, flax, Kevlar, EPS, XTR, agave, balsa, poly, whatever, right? And then there's another spin of the wheel to determine some sort of aesthetic that you want on it, much like wooden accents and meaningful symbology or something like that, right? And then you have board builders build their version of this board for Rob, right? So imagine this multi-episode behind the scenes look into the shaping bays, into the glassing rooms, into the artistic element with multiple challenges. There's a winner for the artistic vision. There's a winner for, you know, different things, right? We have a laminator judge, a shaper judge. We have a surfer judge, which would be Rob, and different types of challenges involved in this. Maybe it's glass on fin. There's just different things you could tweak on. There's certainly a lot to chew on here. What if it was regional? What if you had California versus the Gold Coast or something like that? Regional team battles built into it. Lots of marketing built into this thing too, obviously. And of course, most importantly, which is what the Boardroom's efforts are, is to lift up the art and the craft and the industry of the surfboard manufacturing.
No question that concept does that very effectively because it's a deep dive into the board building process itself. What I do like about it as well is where Electric Acid Surfboard Test is trying to figure out which board is the best among these boards for this given surfer, which is kind of this narrow thing that you end up doing that actually doesn't necessarily translate to a broad audience. Instead, what your concept is doing is acknowledging there's relevance to all of it. Like none of it is better or superior than the other thing. They all have relevance and probably different days of the week or different style of waves and different whatever applicability for them. But let's just explore the myriad options that are out there and do a deep dive into them. And Rob is going to rip on all of them and have commentary about all of them. But it's not really about putting one on top of the other. It's about putting them all side by side and doing an analysis. So I think that's actually good.
Yeah. And I was thinking also when you spin the wheel for which type of board, let's say it was Nose Rider was what the wheel landed on, you would remove Nose Rider for the next season and you could replace that with whatever, like Egg or Twinser or Quad or high performance longboard, like, so you're just moving. So you could get multiple seasons out of it. Anyway, I think Scott Murdoch sent this email and he and I, like I said, he had me, my brain was spinning. It's a really great idea. And I would love to see somebody could step up and do something. You'd need to have some relationships with Netflix. Maybe the core audience, maybe maybe it's more about the core audience on Stab. So hopefully Sam, if he hasn't already chewed on something like this, he chews on an idea like this. And I think it'd be fun. Regional would be kind of cool too, like battles somehow. I don't know. There's a lot there.
Stab has their plate full and tons more that they could probably be doing if they had more time and manpower. Somebody else needs to get into this video production game in the surf world. And you and I are logical fits to do it. It's just a whole different business. But we
Yeah.
have the ideas, and the
Yeah.
interest and the
Yeah.
expertise, I would argue.
We need a production team,
Anybody,
to kind
yeah,
of take
anybody
our
want to
big
back?
idea and run with it. You know what I mean?
I mean,
And then that means you need a sponsor. It feels like somebody could jump into this space and really kind of own it. And who would want to own it, And it would be somebody like RevChem or somebody like, I don't know, maybe,
I
I don't know.
I just feel like you and I have friends who would fund it. We could find somebody to fund it if we just came up with the business model for it. But at the end of the day, for the amount of workload involved, it's like
That's a
you're
full-time
gonna
job.
you're gonna make a couple nickels. That's about it. That's the problem with the surf world.
It's a full-time job for
I
sure.
like it though. I like it.
Yeah, I think I'm excited about it. Maybe somebody will reach out, or maybe somebody just takes it and runs with it. At the end of the day, this isn't about you or I. It's about lifting up the board builders,
Yeah.
getting the board
Yeah.
builders involved
And
and not just the shapers.
I think you nailed it with Rob being the test pilot.
Yeah, he's one on the short list. I also had interesting. I want your take on this. Tosh Tudor.
Oh yeah. Well, Rob, I mean, Tosh is just a great surfer. It's a question of how communicative is he. Rob is not only an effective communicator, he's pulling from 50 years of information. So,
Yeah, Tosh has got his father who knows a ton about this stuff. So I agree with you. It was like that was my first thought. Can Tosh communicate effectively, like in a really robust way? And initially I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, gosh, I bet he's got a lot of insight that we wouldn't realize because of Joel.
but no comparison to Rob.
No, Rob would be the guy. And who else is on that list?
And
Like
we
a,
end at Rob. We start and we finish with Rob. And he's a board
what about
builder
an
too. I mean,
Australian
he's a
guy like a
shaper.
Margot or
Margot
there's
is a
probably
great
some,
surfer.
yeah.
Great surfer, not a shaper.
No, but yeah, but I was just thinking who would be the surfer? Like it could be, it doesn't have to be a shaper, right?
No, but it helps give Rob extra credit points because he is
Right.
a shaper as well.
How about Tomo? Tomo's a
Phenomenal
great
choice.
surfer, great shaper.
Phenomenal
Might be a
choice.
little limited. He's pretty performance oriented. But
Yeah, that's true.
that would be the fun part. Dude, you get nose rider. When was the last time you rode a tail dragger, Daniel?
Um, Speaking of Scott, Murdoch Swords is his label. He years ago, one of the first boardroom shows I went to, might have been the second or third. He showed up with gifts. He gave me a gift, a couple of gifts, and then he gave you oolong tea that he brought all the way down from Oregon or Washington. I forget where he's at.
God bless him. That was so cool, right?
I
The
I was
oolong.
like, yeah, I was like, wow, dude, you not only is it thoughtful because it's like so precise. You had been talking about oolong tea, but traveling with gifts sucks. Especially
Yeah.
you always want to travel light, and then you got to
Yeah.
pack gifts. But it was very, very thoughtful. So I always remember that.
That's cool. And yeah, that's a sweet, sweet thing. Right on.
Mitch
That's what makes the world a wonderful place is people like Scott.
and DJ Seaweed has done that too. One of the first times I met DJ Seaweed, he handed me a bag full of gifts for myself and my wife, and it was really nice.
He's a super sweet guy too. These
Yeah.
are people that I would like to emulate some of their characteristics. I'm not a good gift giver. I need to, and I wish I was. Like, I like giving gifts, but maybe I've got some self-centeredness that I need to deal with. I'm not thinking of others enough, David.
I like giving gifts too.
By the way, speaking of gifts, the greatest gift perhaps you ever have given me was the Maldon salt on my steaks.
Oh yeah. Did
Dude.
I told you about it, but did I ship you the
No,
Maldon yet?
you told me about it. That was the gift.
Okay.
My wife has the salt. And she's like, "Oh, I have
Yeah.
that right here." I'm like, "Oh my God, unreal. This is the stuff." So yeah, I've been putting those flakes on my steaks with just the black pepper, like you suggested, ground pepper. That's all you need.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't need some
Totally.
like sweet and spicy friggin' blackened powder or whatever. You don't need any of the stuff you would buy in a jar from a store. You don't need it.
Definitely not. So that Maldon salt, I mean, so a listener actually turned me on. Well, let me back up. The Maldon salt I've known is fantastic. That's like one of my favorite universal salts that I use daily in the kitchen. But what I was telling Scott was the little container, the little box of it that you can get at the grocery store is $10 to $15. It's super expensive for salt. And your wife I told you Maldon, you're like, oh, I've never heard of that. Turns out your wife already had it in your kitchen. That little box that I was talking about that is pricey. But what the big unlock that I told you about and that a listener originally clued me onto is they sell Maldon in a gallon jug on Amazon for $25. So it's twice the price as your little one, but it's literally 10 times the amount. So
Yeah.
I go through a gallon about once a year. And I've been
Oh
doing
my
it.
God. If I told you were going to consume a gallon of salt this year, you'd be like, hold on.
I don't think I mean, it sounds crazy, but I use salt every day in food. It's not, I'm not over salting anything. It's the
No,
same
I
amount of
know.
salt anybody else would use. But the difference, so the salt is giant flakes. And I have a mortar and pestle. Sometimes I'll crush them up if I need to, but you would think, oh, that's way too much salt. It's less salty than table salt is. That's what you need to realize is crappy quality salt tastes more salty. Good quality salt tastes less salty and more pure. Um, so yeah, I'm glad you like it. I'm glad you've embraced it. But listeners, if you want Maldon, buy it on Amazon by the gallon.
See, when you move into the food and whatever, let's call it the foodie podcast, for lack of a better phrase, you could do a whole episode on different salts. And you could have them all laid out and you could go into each and every one and why you use this one on the salad and this one on the steak and blah, blah, blah. And I sprinkle some of this on my ice cream and blah, blah, blah. Whole
Don't even
episode.
get me started on olive oils, dude.
Oh my God. Don't get me started on olive oil. I take shots of olive oil. Boom.
I know you
Straight
told
shot.
me.
Yeah.
So my one little tip I'll give you guys for olive oil
Yeah.
is because olive oil gets very expensive and there's also like kind of designer brands now. I think they do marketing on social media, but the
Mhm.
quality isn't very good and they're still the most expensive ones. So all that is important that you need to look for when you're at the grocery store, forget about brands. There's one thing you need to look for, and that's whether or not it has a harvest date. So you want olive oil young, fresh is good. And you'll always notice every package has an expiration date, but very few have a harvest date. And if they're conscientious, good quality producer, they know that's important and they put the harvest date and of course the location. The location's always on there too. But just buy the one that has the harvest date on it and buy the youngest harvest date. And that's your secret to getting a good olive oil.
Wow. All right. That's really, I did not know that. Harvest
Yeah.
date. Okay. I'll
Yeah,
be
like
looking.
I just bought some the other day and it was harvested in October 2024. So it's, 6 months old or something like that, 7 months old. So just look for a young harvest date. That's your key.
Well, we will
Okay.
do that.
Little detour there.
What if I told you that Idolo, Ethan, Jack Robinson, Jordy Smith, and Yago Dora were your final five at
Epic,
Cloudbreak, 6 to 8 foot
epic
Cloudbreak?
final, epic final five at Cloudbreak.
That's where
Let's
we are.
lock it in right now.
Lock it in. Cancel the tour. You can do the tour, but it doesn't matter. This is who we want. That would be
So
insane.
yeah, I'm happy with it. I also would be happy if Baron Mamiya jumped in there.
Me
I don't
too.
know who, I don't want him to bump any of those five out, unfortunately. And then the true underdog kind of Cinderella story would be Leonardo Fioravanti. If he could jump back into the top five, that would also be really interesting.
I totally agree with you because Leo is the scariest. If Leo was in the top five, he would be the one that you're like, okay, this guy's going to knock out some, if he came in at five and was the last seed, he's the one you're like, I could see him in the final. Not that you couldn't see them all in the final, but he's the one that he comes out swinging. You know what I mean? Like he might punch himself out, but he's going to come out swinging right away, really heavily.
So Italo, Ethan, Jack, Yago, Jordy, who would win the day at Cloudbreak?
Um, Jack.
Yeah, I was going to say Jack too.
Yeah.
I
If it's 6 to 8 foot
hate
cloud break.
I hate the idea that the big bloke might finally get a shot on finals day, and that's the way that suits him least. Jordy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It depends like how clean is it? How clean and perfect is Cloudbreak? Or is there some bomber like West sets and it's got a little bit of, look, the bottom line is
Well,
all five of those guys and all six of those guys that we mentioned could easily win if it's 6 to 8 foot Cloudbreak. And that's the beauty of Cloudbreak. It's not like you're at lowers and you're going, oh, there's no way if, you know, what's his name? Um, who's the guy from Santa Barbara, the regular foot? It was in the final five at lowers. You
oh, Connor Coffin.
Connor, yeah, thank you. I was thinking Griffin. There's no way Connor could win at lowers, but Connor could if it's 6 to 8 foot. Connor and his brother Parker surfed huge cloud break this year and were killing it, and it was massive. How
Yeah.
good is it going to be if it's that? If it's 10 to 12 foot cloud break?
I mean, then
That's what we want. That's what
then Jack Robinson really has the edge. The bigger it gets, the more Jack Robinson has the edge because he is just a straight ninja. Sorry.
that's okay. You're
He's a
still around. Was
straight,
that an earthquake?
it's a cat. He's a straight ninja in big waves like that, like, but then, I mean, I can't remember Italo surfing Cloudbreak. I know he has, and I'm sure I've seen it. I just can't remember him being a standout performer there. You would think he's obviously a goofy foot. He's been in, he's won the Pipe Masters, barreling waves, rips other style of waves, but connecting the dots on a long canvas like that might be a little bit of a challenge for him. I don't know.
Well, here's what's interesting is actually this Burley event. Elo's in first place. He had his worst event in Elsa in at Bell's. He had his worst event at Bell's, a 17th place. How's he going to do at Burley Heads? Like, it isn't like you don't, when you say Burley Heads, you don't think Elo. You know what I mean?
No,
There are ways
no,
where you think Elo. Burley Heads isn't necessarily one of them. I'm not even sure he's ever surfed there, to be honest with you.
no, but he grew up on that. I forget the name of it in Brazil. It's like a right hand point that's kind of small but rippable. So I think that is a similar style of wave.
Yeah, you can't count him out, but he's not, it'll be interesting to see how he does coming off of a lackluster performance. You feel like there might be a little bit of pressure on
Yeah.
him. I don't know. We'll see,
Well,
but
I
yeah.
I have more Burley talk, but I'm going to save it for our bonus show. So listeners go
Okay.
listen to us on Patreon if they want to do a
Yeah.
deep dive into Burley.
Yeah.
But while we're here on the main show,
Bells.
let's recap Bells a little bit. Obviously,
Yes.
Jack Robinson took the win on the men's side. Isabella Nichols took the win on the women's side. Do you have thoughts on either of those surfers or their performances?
I'm super excited about Isabella Nichols. I actually had her as my double up surfer. She went on to win and, great surfing. Um,
Yeah.
the men's side was insane. Like the competition was really good. Um, specifically Jake Marshall continues to
Jake
shine. He had
continues to impress, man.
he had some carve downs, big swooping top turns, and then keeping the rail engaged all the way down, a la Jack Robinson and John Florence.
Yep.
And I was very impressed with his big keeping the rail engaged carve downs. Jake Marshall, of course, Griffin had his comeback event that he needed to have. I feel like now Griffin's on a roll. By the way, if you're still in Survival League and you haven't used Griffin, I feel like this is the time to. I feel like Griffin's on a comeback, and he's it's all good for Griffin. That's my feeling there. But let's keep that for later. And then of course Jack himself. As soon as these guys, Kanoa, whoever, as soon as these guys laid down a wave, Jack just went, "Oh yeah, watch this," and just took it to a 2 or 3 notches above whoever he was surfing against, and he looked unstoppable.
Well, I thought the surfer of the event was actually Ethan Ewing. And I was looking forward to those guys kind of coming across opposite ends of the draw. I thought for sure Ethan was a lock for the final. He went down to Kanoa Igarashi, and then Kanoa went on to beat Morgan Siblick, who we talked about last week. Kind of great to see Morgan back. And then Kanoa faced Jack Robinson in the final. So I thought Jack and Ethan were the two guys. And if I compared those two guys, I thought Ethan was a notch above Jack. So it's unfortunate to not see them link up at the final. But that surfing that Ethan did against Connor O'Leary in the round of 16, he netted a 18.76 heat total, was the best surfing I've ever seen at Bells Beach. And people are calling the best surfing that has ever happened at the bowl.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, for years I've kind of gone, bells, okay. 2 turns, you win if you get 3 turns before the closeout section. And for whatever reason this year, I finally succumbed. And I think that mostly because of all the history and the way Jack surfed it, Bells deserves to be on tour no matter what. Is it a dream tour spot, David?
No.
Okay, that's but should it I agree. But when I was watching it this year, I was like, this is I'm engaged. I get
Yeah,
it. Okay, let's
the waves, I mean, it's still soft, but what we saw, remember when John started doing the style of surfing he was doing at Margaret River?
Right, right.
That unlocked a way that Margaret River had never been surfed before. And we talk about high performance surfing, and we want to, everybody starts thinking above the lip surfing. What John did at Margaret and Ethan did this year at Bell's was show you innovation, progressive surfing with a traditional foundation. So it's rail surfing, but it's teetering on the brink of disaster. It's like those three searing turns that Ethan did in that heat was just as progressive and innovative as any air I've seen. So it's all of the foundational core surfing that you and I like, power, but it's innovative and it's pushing. And so that's what was thrilling about it. And he just happened to have the right wave. And that wave, like it's hard to fit in the critical parts of that wave, but he happened to place those turns beautifully. They were explosive. It was just thrilling to watch.
Yeah, that's what can't be overlooked here, I think, is the actual wave itself. Because it's, we often talk about how boring the wave pool is. Because Bell's is, even the surfers aren't sure if this is the right one that's going to actually
Yeah.
form up good. Because there's that uncertainty, that actually creates some engagement from us, the end user, the guy watching it. We're like, is this going to be the one? We don't know. You take off at perfect, wave pool wave, you're like, oh, well, this is the one, of course. They're all the same. That uncertainty adds to the expertise that Ethan Ewing was showing us by being able to find that right wave, and Jack Robinson as well. These guys you would
Yeah.
see would take off often on the second wave, and it would start with some white water in the wave face, and you'd be like, oh, gross. But that wave would form up perfectly. The white water would sort of smooth out, and they would end up doing usually that second or third turn was the one where everything came together. And then, of course, that end section's a little like it shouldn't have as much power to the end score as I think it does. I don't know what your thoughts are. They do need to finish the wave, and sometimes all of that energy can come together and be momentous and mountainous and crucial, but other times it's not all that great.
So that's an interesting point of discussion. Occasionally, we touch on how psychology affects the judges, and I really feel like they are not immune to it. They have, and in this instance, the Ethan Ewing big score, he did those three turns and he kicked out, which is a more effective way to get a score than nursing it to the inside. Even if you hit the end section on the inside, it's almost more effective just to kick out after the three impactful turns. It's concise, impactful, makes a statement, boom, you're out of there. Whereas if you do those three and then start nursing, it's almost like the memory of the power of those three turns slowly starts downgrading. And then if you finally make it to the inside and there's a section to negotiate or whatever, it's now that becomes the lasting impression. And again, I feel like your 8.5 just somehow got downgraded to an 8.2, maybe a 7.9 if you fall, but
Well,
all that
that's the key. If you fall on that crappy end section, what's the upside? You make it, you maybe get an extra half a point. You fall, you lose a point and a half, maybe, or like for sure a point.
Yeah, I feel like even if you make it, you've kind of somehow taken away the impact of the first three turns. So Ethan doing those and just kicking out like a boss was like, no questions asked. That's an 8.5. No, there's nothing further to discuss.
Yeah.
So the judges really do need to figure that element out. Another thing though you were correct when you said look to backside surfers. When we were coming into this event and picking survival team, you're like, look at the Connor O'Learys, Cole Houshman, whatever, because they can fit those backside turns into the critical part on those mushy waves a little bit more easily than frontside surfers can, just because of the angle of approach or whatever. But Jack and Ethan figured out that angle of approach on their forehand, and that set them apart from everybody else.
Yeah. Look, it was a fun event. I mean, I enjoyed watching it. I
Me
enjoyed
too.
professional surfing for the last event. I thought it was good. And
The other big come up here is Kanoa. Kanoa made the final and finished second, and so that helped him jump up in the rankings. Let me see, 4 spots. So good on him because I feel like he wasn't having the strongest year. So he's up in sixth place now. You mentioned Griffin Colapinto. Griffin was having a shocker. This result pushed him up 12 spots. So that's a big move. Jake Marshall's up 7 spots into 13th place. And then Jack Robinson, of course, was the biggest or kind of the most significant move, up 6 places into third. The women's side, I felt like, is also worth discussing just because some of our favorites really underperformed. Caitlin Simmers had a shockingly early exit from the event. Aaron Brooks, too, I feel. Let me look. Molly Picklum lost in the round of 16. Caitlin Simmers were lost in the round of 16 to Sally Fitzgibbons. Um, Aaron Brooks, the round of 16 to Isabella Nichols, who would go on to win the event. So kind of a big shakeup on the women's side, too. Luana Silva made the final, which I did not see coming. So
Yeah,
big mix.
Aaron Brooks is interesting. I look at Aaron Brooks when I'm filling out my fantasy team and I go, okay, right hand, how is she on her backside? And right hand, like El Salvador, ninth place, Bell's ninth place. We're going to Burley Heads. Has she surfed there? You know, she's young. She probably doesn't know the wave. It's not as perfect as Snapper. So I'm a little hesitant. I, if there was a left-hander, I'd be like, okay, Aaron's on my team, but
Yeah.
those are my thoughts.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will get more into Burley in the
Oh yeah,
bonus show on
that's right.
Patreon, which we've got to be going to shortly. Just a quick reminder, though, the Surf Rider Foundation. Why wouldn't you be a member of the Surf Rider Foundation? You could set your amount of support, $5 a month, $3 a month, whatever, $25 a month. And then they will keep you informed on all of their initiatives around the world. And they are actively involved in many, and they need your help. So,
And I have a musty moment, but it's presented by Trees Wax, right? Our friend Christian and the good people at Trees Wax, our musty moment. I'm going to save it for our Patreon event.
oh, wow. Okay. Well, while you do that, I do want to give a Duke of the Week shout out to the recently dearly departed Lane Davey.
Absolutely.
Lane Davey, not enough could be said about Lane Davey, but Lane Davey passed away on April 26th after a 2-year battle with cancer. And we love Lane. We were talking about Lane, I don't know when it was, 3 or 4 years ago. And I think you might have brought her up actually, because the WSL was finally kind of giving the women their shot at Pipeline. And so we were talking about female pioneers at Pipeline. And I think you mentioned Lane Davey as somebody who doesn't get enough accolade. So I reached out to her shortly thereafter and then gratefully did an interview with her at the end of 2022. This was prior to her cancer diagnoses. And she was just all class, like super interesting backstory. Was born in Seattle and like early days of the hip hop scene, where New York was kind of where hip hop was, or breakdancing and hip hop was birthed, but it made its way to Seattle. And she was just in this like fringe culture of hip hop that she maintained participating in until the end. But her family, her dad packed up everything from Seattle when she was pretty young and moved her to the big island of Hawaii. So she was a complete fish out of water in Hawaii. But as she told it, some of that counterculture, like her embracing the counterculture and knowing how to kind of deal with bullying or whatever comes with it, boded well when she got to Hawaii, where she was, the Howley girl on the big island in early days. And she embraced surfing with that same kind of mentality of being counterculture. And so while hip hop was her first love, surfing became her second love. And ultimately, she dedicated 30 years of her life to one wave, pipe. So she would surf
Yeah.
elsewhere, but if pipe was good, she was on it for 30 years.
Yeah. And, my thoughts are with her husband, Sean Davey, who's a friend and certainly was by her side, just a full, both of them heroes in their own way. Um, Lane just fought this thing to the bitter end. She was a fighter and Sean was just there the whole time. And I think, he's got to have obviously a very heavy heart. So my thoughts are with Sean Davey as well.
They were married for 30 years. So incredible. That's something you don't hear very often anymore. So kudos to them for that alone. But yeah, I mean, a heartbreak for sure for him. And I think he articulated it really beautifully on Instagram in his kind of send off for Lane. Just shared some intimate details, about their love. So definitely hearts are with Sean. And yeah, surfing world lost an icon, Lane Davey.
Yeah. Rest in power. Okay. Well, David, until next time, adios and aloha.